When it comes to creating practical sets and environments, Disney is the undisputed king. Attractions like the original Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland or Tokyo DisneySea's Journey to the Center of the Earth are living testaments to what the Imagineers are capable of when given the creative freedom. Unfortunately, the same can't be said when it comes to creating digital worlds, specifically through the use of projection mapping. Even though Disney has had some luck with a few of their attractions, many of their other experiences have failed to come anywhere close to matching their practical counterparts, with the worst offender of this being the Indiana Jones Adventure ride at Disneyland. With projection technology slowly becoming the standard for theme park experiences, let's take a deep dive into Indiana Jones Adventure's projection mapping and see just how much a few lights can negatively affect the overall experience of an attraction. The projection mapping scenes in Indiana Jones Adventure is one of the most strange decisions Disney has made in the last few years. What once was an eerily lit area designed to build suspense has now been turned into a mishmash of bright lights and pointless scenes. Previously, the ride utilized rotating sets, giving off the illusion that the vehicles are traveling through different doors. Although the effect was extremely convincing, due to a multitude of reasons, it was disabled and replaced with projection mapping. If you want to learn more about these effects that were lost over the years, I recommend you check out my previous video, which covered almost all the lost effects in great detail. While the projection mapping in Indiana Jones Adventure may look cool, it fails to capture the same feelings and suspense the original ride had. Many people in the Disney community tend to take a more negative stance toward this, pointing fingers at the projection mapping and claiming that the technology is not only lazy, but also doesn't belong inside of a theme park. Personally, I disagree. Although it may not seem like it, projection mapping is probably one of the hardest things to do correctly in a theme park environment. Designing something that was originally 2D and transforming it into a 3D world will always have its own set of challenges. If the effect is done correctly, it can expand the thematic scope of the attraction, making scenes feel larger or more alive without the need of extra space. At the same time, if the effect is done incorrectly, it can stand out like a sore thumb, turning what otherwise would have been an immersive environment into a meme the internet constantly makes fun of. Despite the fact that projection mapping can be used in almost any scenario where there's a surface, in a theme park environment it shines its brightest when used alongside another thematic element. In most cases, projection mapping isn't a replacement for a scene, but rather an enhancement, a way to improve something to where props and animatronics normally wouldn't be able to. Take for example Alice in Wonderland at Disneyland in California. In 2014, the ride received a projection mapping overhaul, which in many ways brought new life into the attraction. Areas that used to feel stagnant with little to no movement, like the plant scene towards the beginning of the ride, now had elements like blooming flowers, flying insects, and glistening dew caught in spiderwebs. In contrast, the projection mapping inside of Indiana Jones Adventure was used as a replacement, ripping out almost all of the previous effects in favor of only projections. Where the original scene used unique designs and lighting to make each door easy to identify, the current projection mapping effects blends everything together, making all three doors, which used to have their own personality, look nearly identical to one another. On top of that, the Mara scene in the Hall of Promise suffers from a similar issue. The projections on Mara's face attempts to create a sense of horror, as the deity lights up in anger. However, due to the lack of practical sets and perspective changes, ends up looking flat and lifeless. Compare this to Alice in Wonderland, where projection mapping is used to show Alice chasing the white rabbit. Perspective changes in both the projection mapping and physical props creates the illusion of an area further beyond the brush, despite the fact there's nothing behind the projection screen. Unfortunately, the problems with Indiana Jones Adventure's projection mapping goes much deeper than just bad implementation and perspective changes. However, in order to understand these issues, we must first look at the queue. As I've stated before in my previous video, The queue is one of the most important parts in any theme park experience. It not only builds a foundation for the story, but is also the primary place for where guests are fully immersed into an environment. Take for example the indoor queue in Disneyland Space Mountain. Once guests enter inside, they are surrounded by futuristic elements like star-filled windows, constant space chatter, and a massive launch bay disguising the loading area. These elements at first may seem pointless, but in actuality serve a vital part in making guests feel like they are gearing up for an adventure through space. As guests board the attraction, the feeling built up from the queue helps boost the believability and excitement of the experience, turning what otherwise would have been a roller coaster in a dark room into a thrilling space adventure. Indiana Jones Adventure takes this concept and expands on it, using its queue to not only immerse guests in a recently unearthed temple, but also tell a grander story about the temple deity Mara. Throughout the entire queue, from the outside of the temple to the loading area, guests walk past multiple depictions of a gift-giving deity with their eyes closed. Despite there being dozens of statues, paintings, and murals of the god, none of the depictions show the deity with their eyes opened. As the guests travel further into the queue, the flickering lights illuminate ancient text transcribed into the walls, deactivated booby traps, and a massive mural of a closed-eyed deity on the ceiling. Entering into an impromptu theater room, multiple reels explain the various gifts offered by the temple and the dangers of looking into the eyes of the mysterious deity, Mara. As the reels continue to cycle through, guests are briefed on the treacherous adventure ahead and of the other tourists who have mysteriously vanished, presumably after looking into the eyes of Mara. Finally, as the guests board their vehicles, they are greeted with a depiction of Mara with its eyes piercing through a haphazardly placed blindfold. Up until this point, the dilapidated state of the temple, combined with the mystery surrounding Mara, was trying to create a sense of suspense, mystery, and eeriness. In the original door scene, as the vehicles enter into the room, the three doors remain partially lit, illuminating the three different gifts guests could receive. As the vehicle enters into the chamber, the other doors slowly fade away into darkness, leaving the only one chamber lit. Although the effect was extremely simple, the minimal use of lighting combined with the lack of movement helped accentuate the themes built up from the queue. In contrast, the projection mapping version of the ride is the complete opposite. Rather than trying to build off of the suspense, mystery, and eeriness found in the queue, it instead fills the entire room with light and projection animation, similar to what is seen in a nighttime spectacular. The overly animated doors combined with the brightly lit environment creates a sort of disconnect between what guests experienced in the queue and what they're seeing in the ride. Whereas the queue was dimly lit and focused more on the mystery of the temple, the projection mapping is more awe-inspiring, putting a huge amount of emphasis on the impressive animation instead of focusing on the story. Although it is true that the new projection mapping effects add more personality compared to the previous iteration, it unfortunately comes at the cost of feeling extremely out of place in terms of the story, as well as uprooting the mood set by the queue. Moving on to the Hall of Promise, the projection mapping effects aren't much better. Depending on which door the vehicle goes through, a different effect is projected onto Mara's face. Each of these effects are unique in their own way, except for the fact that they show Mara opening their eyes. While I do love the fact that the projection mapping is used to bring Mara to life, the overly flashy animation ends up pulling focus away from the eyes and interrupting the story. It also doesn't help that one of the effects looks like a flushing toilet bowl with a dash of lightning. Although the original version of the ride wasn't perfect, it did a much better job compared to the current projection mapping. The use of smoke and strobe effects, while very basic, brought the focus to Mara's eyes and fit perfectly into the narrative the queue was trying to build. However, unlike the previous door scene, I do think that the Hall of Promise would have benefited from some light use of projection mapping. While the smoke and strobe effects worked, they really couldn't capture the intensity of the scenes the Imagineers were going for. Personally, I think the Hall of Promise would have looked the best if it used projection mapping to mimic the scene shown in the Indiana Jones Adventure behind the scenes special. Using projection mapping to show Mara's red eyes slowly opening as well as the Hall of Promise caving in would have been a great way to respect the story of the ride while also updating the attraction for future generations. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It goes a very long way in helping the channel. If you want to have a further discussion of the topic, you can either comment down below or click the link in the description to join my Discord server.